Is this flat steak the ultimate new cut for barbecue? It might be, but it definitely requires a new barbecue technique.
Big thanks to Borniak Smokers for sponsoring this video.
Do you recognize the steak that I'm talking about? You see, this beautiful piece of meat is called the flank steak. That's right, a beautiful cut, and if treated the right way, you're going to have a really enjoyable steak. However, it also might be a new cut that we can use to barbecue. But there's a problem with this cut. You see, if you cook a brisket or a pork belly or something like that, they're mostly thick pieces of meat. That means they have enough juices and fat to regenerate moisture inside that cut to get a juicy piece of meat. But if we take a look at this steak, it is super flat. That means it's going to cook really fast and most likely is going to dry out. Is there a way to save this cut while barbecuing it? Well, there might be. But let's find out if it works. First thing that I'm going to do is season this beautiful flank steak. I'm going to take some Pitmaster X classic barbecue seasoning, sprinkle it on. That's going to give me a beautiful color on this steak and it's going to give me plenty of flavor. I'm not going to put on as much as I normally would just because of the thickness of the steak. So only a little bit will be plenty, especially when seasoning both sides. Now I'm going to let this steak sit for about 10 minutes so it can absorb the flavors of the seasoning. In the meantime, I'm going to fire up my Borniak smoker. This is super easy to do. All I need to do is switch it on, set the temperature. I'll be cooking at a temperature of 120 degrees Celsius. So I'm definitely going to go for low and slow because I want this steak to stay as juicy as I can get it. On the side I have a hopper in which I have wood chips. These are cherry wood chips. I'm going to switch on the smoker, and once it sits up to temperature, all I need to do is just put the steak in and let the barbecue do its job. It's only been 2 hours and the steak is already struggling to stay moist. I have a core temperature of only 60 degrees and I have the color that I'm looking for, but normally I would take this steak a little further just to, well, get a nice crust on the outside. However, the steak already looks like this. See how that's still a little bit dry? I would take it a little bit further normally, but the pellicle is super dry on the outside. It's already expelling moisture and I'm just afraid that I leave it in longer. It's just going to completely dry out and the experiment is going to fail. So therefore I'm just going to wrap this up now in some aluminum foil, not in butcher's paper. Also something that I'd love to do, but definitely not with this steak because I just want to prevent that this loses too much moisture. So I'm going to wrap it up tight and then I'm going to do one more thing so I'm absolutely sure, and that is put in a wireless thermometer to make sure that I got the right temperatures. There we go. And then I'm going to put it back in the barbecue and keep on smoking. Well, I'm going to switch off the smoke and I'm just heating it up. So I'm going to raise the temperature to 140 degrees Celsius because with the aluminum foil, it kind of protects the meat. So you need a little bit of extra power to get that heat through that aluminum foil. Since we're aiming for a core temperature of 92 degrees Celsius because that is the temperature that makes it, well, the minimum temperature for me to call it actual barbecue and to compare it like temperatures that we would cook a brisket at. So on to the next phase of the cook with the Texas crotch. I just got the notification that the steak is done so I can take it out of the barbecue. Get that thermometer out so we can take a closer look at it, see what it looks like now. I checked. Ooh, that looks actually way better than what we had before. Way, way better. Nice and soft. Not fall apart tender soft, but it looks really, really good. So now, I would normally let this rest. Let it rest for an hour or so and then slice into it. But that's not what we're going to do today. You see, there's a barbecue restaurant in Austin, Texas that received a Michelin star. And what they do is this. It involves a pan like this. You see, the Pitmaster X cast iron pan with a hand polished inside. I'm quite proud of it. This thing is a ripper. So if you want more details on that, links down below, go check it out. And in this pan goes beef tallow. And now I'm going to have this beef tallow melted. And there we have it. Molten beef tallow. Now I'm going to put the steak in that beef tallow, and this just melted. Let me actually measure the temperature. Ooh, it's 90 degrees Celsius, so it's actually the temperature that we have the steak in. That's a little high because I want to keep it at a lower temperature. The thing about this technique is that Leroy and Lewis, the Michelin star restaurant, actually use this technique on their beef cheeks. So I saw a video recently where they put the beef cheeks in the beef tallow just to store them until they were served. And that is kind of interesting. My guess is it's going to keep them as moist and juicy as possible while they hold the food. Now normally that means you eat your food at 65 degrees Celsius, because above that you will burn your mouth, and below that you will experience cold food. So I'm going to keep this pan with the steak and the beef tallow at a temperature of 65 degrees Celsius. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to do that right now, changing the temperature to 65 degrees Celsius in this barbecue. I'm going to open up the door so we can ventilate a little bit, get some of that heat out, and then I'm going to place the pan. Did we just discover a new method to hold food at an eating temperature for any time that we want? Well, I guess we're going to find out tomorrow, because I'm going to let it sit there for 12 hours. It's time. 12 hours later, and we got a hot pan, a hot piece of meat. All right, let's get this out and see if it worked. There we go. The flank steak with the new 12 hours in beef tallow. It's pretty good to me so far. We kept the bark, which is important, of course. Ooh, that's nice and soft. That looks pretty good to me. That is one juicy steak. That definitely worked. This is more juicy than I expected. Because it's a lean cut, I didn't expect it to be as juicy as this, but apparently the beef tallow went up into that flank steak and made it extremely juicy. That is insane. Let's see the tenderness. Wow. Wow, that is good. All right, let's do a taste test. That is pretty good. I had the idea that it lost some of the flavor that sits on the bark, so that's kind of a shame. I would season it afterwards. But overall, the meat is really tender and really juicy. And that is very, very impressive. Let me just sprinkle on a little bit more Texas seasoning, see what happens. Oh, that's good. I'm going to try this method again. This is definitely something to be repeated. I'm calling it the beef tallow hold. As far as I'm concerned, this is a game changer. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. See you guys next time. Cheers.